How's it going, guys? Welcome back to #AskGSM here today for February 22nd, 2017. I am Graham GSM Matthews, episode 169. Get all your laughs out now and every single Wednesday right here on the show. I answer your questions from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Let's get right into it. I got to go to class in about an hour, so I don't want to rush through all of your questions. I do want to give a sufficient amount of time to each question. So without further ado, you guys can find me on the Twitter machine sending questions there at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights or the wall itself, or drop a comment in this very video. I'll be sure to include your question in next week's edition. All the links are down below in the description box. So without further ado, Emmanuel A. from YouTube. Funny thing about Rock Mankind's This Is Your Life segment, according to Dave Meltzer, the actual highest rated Raw segment was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker for the WWF Championship the night after King of the Ring 1999, with Austin and Undertaker's match pulling a 9.5 rating and over 10 million viewers. While This Is Your Life did an 8.1 rating, This Is Your Life gets more credit because Vince Russo, and by extension, even WWE, have for the longest time used it as an argument for how wrestling itself does not draw as much as hardcore fans think. Do you think that the idea that skits are better than wrestling or draw more than wrestling is a fair argument, or is it more of a misconception? That's a great question, and very timely too. I know I talked about This Is Your Life last week here on the show, coming off that fantastic Festival of Friendship on Raw 9 days ago. But you know what? That's an excellent question. I can't sit here and tell you which way is right. I mean, you obviously know it more than I would in terms of ratings, and I didn't really do that much research. I probably should have. That's a kind of a bigger question for a bigger topic, but still a great question at that. In my mind, I'm not going to say skits are going to draw more viewers than a wrestling match, because obviously when you have a pay-per-view, I honestly do think that's a misconception, just because that was one segment. This Is Your Life was fucking phenomenal. But then again, that was in 1999. How many segments, other than the fucking sex between Edge and Lita, the live sex celebration, which was an obvious attempt to boost viewership, and they have not seen ratings like that since then, since 11 years ago. But other than that, in the past 15, 16, 17 years, 18 years almost at this point, wow, how many segments have we had on Raw that did not draw viewers? Fucking debates, fucking this, fucking that, all that shitty-ass sports entertainment bullshit we get on Raw that doesn't draw a fucking fly. Maybe not even more so than a wrestling match between Braun Strowman and Big Show. I don't know what the ratings were for that hour of Raw this past week. I have no idea. I'm just using that as an example. So I do think that's a misconception. I mean, you can't just have a straight Raw where you only have wrestling matches. You do have to incorporate, show elements and elements of a regular television show with drama and storyline, which you can do in a wrestling match, and you can have skits, but they got to be done right. And the creative then was so much more different than it is today. And that's why the Festival of Friendship, in my mind, was one of the greatest Raw segments, maybe in the entirety of Raw and Raw's history, but especially in the last couple of years. And I don't know if they probably wrote that, so you can't, bash creative for all the shitty stuff and not praise them for the good stuff. They did a great job with that segment. I'm sure Jericho and Owens had some input, but a majority of it was probably WWE, and they did a great job with it. But other than that, though, no segment comes to mind in the past 20 years that was like, oh my God, this did a huge rating because it was so amazing. We've had a lot of shitty segments. And with wrestling, I mean, when you sell a pay-per-view, you're selling the matches on the card. That's what draws people in, not the fucking segments. You're not promoting, more often than not, you're not promoting a highlight reel or a Miz TV or a Piper's Pit for a pay-per-view. It's the main event for the championship that draws people in. The story, the bad blood, the feud, the championships, everything about it is what draws people in. The skits are an additional, a nice addition to that stuff. But to solely rely on skits for a majority of your television show and to say that it draws more ratings than the matches, I think is silly, just based off one example. Because as you said, Stone Cold and Stone Cold and Undertaker from 1999, it was not a skit. That was a fucking match for the championship, and people tune in to see that shit. So I do think that's a misconception that skits do draw more than wrestling. Maybe in some circumstances, in some instances, under the certain circumstances, but more often than not, it's the wrestling that draws people in. That's why they get pay-per-view, people buying the pay-per-view, buying the network for the wrestling, not the segments. Prince5835, did you used to collect WWE action figures, and do you prefer Jack Pacific or Mattel? I personally did not. I mean, kind of by extension, I did. I actually have a bunch here, so I guess I do. I'm lying when I say I don't. I do, because I have a whole bunch here. I have fucking Ultimate Warrior, CM Punk, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Rob Van Dam, Christian, Ryback, and a whole bunch of others. And I had Regal. I think I have Regal here still. I have Matt Hardy and a few others. My little brother, my younger brother Jackson, whose channel is now up. You can check it out now. I think I plugged it on YouTube about a week ago. But anyway, so when we first started getting wrestling, he doesn't watch wrestling anymore. He hasn't in years, but he was in it for a while when I first started watching it 9 years ago, and he would buy the action figures. I really wouldn't. I would get like the magazines, the posters and shit, and stuff like that. But he would collect the action figures, and he still has a lot of them. Like, even one of my older brother's friends gave us a whole bunch from the Attitude Era, which was fucking really, really nice of him. But, yeah, we still have those, and I think they were all Jack-specific. Mattel isn't bad, but I will say this, though. He collected the action figures, and as you guys would probably see if you go back far enough in my videos from, like, 4 or 5 years ago, even 6 years ago, I would have these belts around my shoulder for, like, the old Wrestle Rant videos. It's kind of hilarious thinking back on it now, and I still have those somewhere in, like, a box in my grandmother's house in some storage facility. I used to collect all those championship belts, and they were Jack-specific. When they went over to Mattel, I think I bought one, like the new ECW championship, and I think that was the last foam belt I ever bought. I don't have a legitimate one, but I used to buy a lot of those foam belts. I had like over 20 of them, because we would use them when we did like fake wrestling, or like our own wrestling federation and shit. We would use those belts. I thought they were sick, so Jack-specific over Mattel any day of the week. Mattel isn't bad, but I grew up on Jack-specific. His next question, speaking of which, dumbest wrestling move you ever did as a kid. Like I said, so my brother and I, for a few years, for a solid 2 years, kind of year and a half, it didn't really last as long as I thought it did, but we had this mini wrestling federation. That's where Next Era Wrestling comes from. I don't know if you guys know that, but my website, nextairawrestling.net, stems from the wrestling federation I did with my younger brother Jackson many years ago, 9, 8, 7 years ago. It was originally called AJM, so if you go to the website and go to the About page, you can find out more about it. But yeah, it was a wrestling federation that we started. I changed it to Next Era Wrestling in 2010, and that's when kind of the website took off as more than just our own wrestling. It took off as my own articles and stuff like that, and it's a whole other entire brand now. But that's what it started as. So even when we would wrestle, we would just do it in our fucking living room, in our family room, our television room, in our house. 7, 9, 8 years ago. So we really, I mean, we would do some trampoline wrestling, but I am not the fucking Jeff Hardy type that's going to be doing flips and shit. I could not do a flip to save my life. Maybe I could athletically, maybe I'm physically capable of it, but I just don't want to do it. That's not what interests me. Even John and, you guys know John and Jackson would do like wrestling matches, a couple of years ago at our old dad's apartment, which was pretty cool. I never really partook in it. I would just film it. I wouldn't wrestle. That'd be John and Jackson. But, so yeah, no, I never really did any dumb stunts. I think I did accidentally hurt my brother at one point when I did like a Mark Henry splash, just like a standing splash on the trampoline. But because I was coming down, he was coming up, because it's a fucking trampoline, obviously. And when I was coming down for the splash, I didn't tuck I still had my knees tucked in too much, and it hit my brother in the stomach. But other than that, though, I really didn't do anything to hurt him intentionally or unintentionally. I never jumped off a roof. I never did even a backflip on a fucking trampoline. We would play it pretty safe. Whenever we did wrestling, I kind of played it safe more often than not. So I can't really name one instance where I did something dumb. Maybe that's the only instance that comes to mind where I hurt someone by accident. But other than that, I never really did anything too stupid. From what I recall, I would really have to think about it, but that's a funny question, though. His third question here: whatever happened to the board of directors? For example, when Charlotte got her loss against Bayley erased a couple of months ago on Raw, she paid her lawyer to do it. Why didn't she go to the board of directors for free? I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things like with the whole 30-day rule that we heard last night on SmackDown, that it just comes and goes. They only utilize it when it fits their narrative. And that's it. It's really, I know they just put out this whole fucking rule book, like a legitimate rule book by WWE they produced, and it's out now. But they don't go by that shit. It's all kayfabe, and they only bring it up when it's useful, when it's, convenient for them. So I have not heard, I could not tell you the last time I heard anything about the board of directors in WWE. It's got to be a while. But yeah, I mean, I would love when they brought that stuff back. We would never actually see the board of directors, interestingly enough, but that's kind of the small stuff I think that would go with any other wrestling, any other organization in general. So whatever happened to the board of directors, I guess we'll never know. Elena the Y, also from YouTube. Kevin Owens is doing great right now, but it feels like no matter what, things won't change. It's like 2013, when CM Punk was doing the best non-pipe bomb work of his career and trouncing the most popular talker in the company, The Rock. And at the end of the day, his role was still to set up Rock and Cena 2 for WrestleMania 29. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe Kevin Owens actually retains against Goldberg. Maybe this starts the change in the status quo. Maybe this is the most hopeful and disappointing word to use as a pro wrestling fan, but maybe this time is different. Do you think this time is different? You know, I hate to say it, but no, I honestly don't. I mean, this has been happening for a long time, where it feels like there's one guy, and not even really Kevin Owens, but I feel like there's one guy every year who fucking carries the company on their back, whether they're champion or not. Last year, in 2016, it was undoubtedly AJ Styles. In 2008, 2009, it was Chris Jericho. In 2012 and 2011, it was CM Punk, and neither year, in 28 or 29, WrestleMania 28 or 29, he didn't main event. He was in a big match at both shows, but he wasn't the main event. I know that's not the way it works, but in my opinion, it should be. And it's not like, oh my God, like Sheamus was the guy in 2011, but he didn't main event WrestleMania because no one cares to see Sheamus in the main event of a fucking WrestleMania. But these are people that would draw. Like, I feel like people would legitimately want to see Punk and Cena in the main event of a WrestleMania, or an AJ Styles in the main event of WrestleMania. And Jericho's main event in Mania before, but for that time period, he really should have been in the main event that year. I mean, Shawn Michaels and Taker should have taken main event, but Jericho was in a fucking throwaway handicap match against three legends that could barely go. I mean, Steamboat did great, but Snuka, Piper, it was embarrassing. So, really, it's pretty crazy to think about. But, yeah, no, I feel like with Kevin Owens, I mean, he wasn't the guy in 2016. I would give that nod to AJ Styles. I mean, it's great that he's doing some amazing work right now. Arguably the greatest work he's probably done since joining the main roster, at least since the Cena feud 2 years ago. At least since then. Maybe not since NXT, but definitely since that Cena feud 2 years ago. But yeah, no, I feel like the end game is still Goldberg beating him at Fastlane. Now, how it happens, I think my ideas on this have changed since last week, or rather the week before, when I said, when someone asked, is there any chance, you know, what's the probability of Owens getting squashed at Fastlane for the championship in the matter of a minute? And I said, it's pretty probable. It's probably going to happen, so I wouldn't really doubt against it. I really would not bet against it. And I mean, I still could see that happening, but at this point, it's a fucking waste. I mean, you give Owens this amazing heel, not really, I call it a heel turn, but it really wasn't. He was already a heel, obviously, when he turned on Jericho, but this brilliant betrayal on Raw of Chris Jericho, and then to an amazing promo the next week, and the attack on Sami Zayn later in the night. Like, all that stuff was fucking fantastic. And as I said in an article just last night, he is finally the heel that he should have been from the get-go as WWE Universal Champion. And to wash all that away by having him get beat by Goldberg in the matter of a minute, in my opinion, is a fucking waste. Now, do I think they'll do that anyway? Absolutely. I mean, but as you had said, it was only 4 years ago that Punk, despite going toe-to-toe and even outshining The Rock on certain occasions back in 2013, was still not in the main event. I mean, he was in like the third match down in the top of the card. I think above the world title match, but behind Triple H and Brock. And obviously behind Cena and The Rock in the main event. But no, I don't think the time is different. I think a lot of things have changed since 2013 in terms of how WWE views its stars and what makes a star in 2017. A lot has changed since then, but at the same time, the more things change, the more other things stay the same. With, you know, a guy like Owens who is finally, you know, getting his hot streak. I'm not saying it's completely impossible that he'll retain the title at Fastlane. I'm not betting on it whatsoever. I just do not see a scenario where Goldberg does not walk into WrestleMania with the championship, which I think is a massive mistake, but that's still the way I see it going down, unfortunately. Captain Sunshine, also from YouTube. What was WWE going for when Roman Reigns tried to attack Braun Strowman on Raw after Strowman had a breakout match against Big Show in 2017 and getting a clean win? The fact that Roman still got laid out at the end is either the best or worst thing about it all. I will say, I got to agree, that match was actually pretty good. I mean, there were a few sloppy spots early on, but other than, it's fucking Big Show in his mid-40s against Braun Strowman. It's not going to be a 5-star classic, but for what it was a really, really good match. And I thought Big Show, I've always had this disdain for the Big Show, but when he does good, I'll praise him for it. And that was a really, really good match. The best Big Show match I've seen in maybe 5 fucking years since the matches he had with Sheamus at the end of 2012. And Braun Strowman, as you had said, had a legitimate breakout match. He had some good matches against Sami Zayn a couple months ago, last month or so, but that match against Big Show might have been his best main roster bout to date. And you got to give him credit for it. The Roman Reigns thing, it would have been a lot worse. Let's not complain too much, because it would have been a lot worse if Roman Reigns came out and then speared Strowman or laid him out to end the show. That would have been stupid. But the fact that Roman came out and then got laid out again by Strowman makes Strowman look that much stronger. And I love the way they're booking this. Hopefully they don't give it away. They don't fuck it up. They have one show left before the pay-per-view. But I love the way they've been handling this with Roman Reigns clearly looking inferior to Braun Strowman. It's not like, oh, Braun is he gets the last laugh on this show, but Roman Reigns comes back and spears him the next. No, it's not like that at all. Like we would see with Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens week in and week out. Owens would attack Roman one week, and then Reigns would get his heat back the next. Braun Strowman has been consistently dominating Roman Reigns at every single turn. Every single time they've come in contact, Braun Strowman has been the superior superstar. And that's the way that it should be. Again, I have no doubt that he's probably losing at Fastlane next month, but the way they're booking him going into that show is phenomenal. And as RJ said himself, we'll plug it right here for him. On the website, nextdaywrestling.net, he wrote a great article yesterday, short and sweet on the website, about how Braun Strowman deserves a marquee, prominent spot at WrestleMania. And I completely agree. Maybe not the main event, but for all the great work, and it goes with Owens, it goes along with AJ Styles, as I just talked about, but he deserves maybe not the main event, but a pretty notable match at the pay-per-view. Even an Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, I guess it could be worse, but I'd rather not have him in that match, even if he was going to win, just because, I don't know, I want him against a notable name. For all the great work that he's done in the past year and really reinventing himself and exceeding all expectations of most fans, then I think he deserves that. He deserves just that at WrestleMania in a pretty notable match. Now, I know the card is stacked, so I don't really know where you fit him in. I think him and Taker's kind of been written off at this point. I think Roman and Taker is where they're headed with that program after what we saw teased at the Rumble. But I do really hope he ends up in a pretty decent match at WrestleMania, because he deserves it after all the great work he's done over the past 8-9 months or whatever, and really kind of resurrecting and rejuvenating his career, and really coming a long way since his days as a Wyatt family member. Brandon A., his questioner, has got a couple questions here. What 4 active WWE wrestlers would you want on your side in a real-life bar fight? Good question. I think it was you that asked the same question last week, but with my version of the click, it would be Owens, Jericho, AJ, and I think it was Samoa Joe, AJ, Jericho, and Owens, I think is what I said. With this question, I would go with Samoa Joe still, but you gotta go with the 4 most menacing guys in the entire company. So I'd go Brock Lesnar. You'd be an idiot not to enlist Brock Lesnar. You said active, so I assume you mean Brock too, not just, including part-timers. So Brock Lesnar, Braun fucking Strowman. You get one look at that guy and you're gonna shit your pants. So, and Big Show too. So there's my 4: Big Show, Samoa Joe, Braun Strowman, and Brock Lesnar. His second question: what is the most underrated WrestleMania match in your opinion? And I mean so underrated that you have barely mentioned it either in an article or on YouTube. Is it really that? That's a great question, but at the same time, it's hard to say. It's so underrated. If I didn't mention it before, I know I've talked about it in various articles here on the channel before and in past years about underrated WrestleMania matches, but if it was so underrated that I didn't even talk about it, then they wouldn't have brought it up if I didn't think it was underrated. So it's kind of hard to say. But since the last time I talked about underrated WrestleMania matches, I know it was only last year, but I honestly think, I don't know if this applies. I'll give you a couple different answers, and I don't know if this really applies, but I thought AJ and Jericho last year Mania was a really underrated match. The show itself in the whole was not great at all, but I thought that match was really good. Jericho going over clean was shocking. It's not like it really mattered anyway, just because, AJ went on to become the number 1 contender to the WWE title the very next night. But I really enjoyed that match more than most people. Then again, I have not seen it since. I'll be watching WrestleMania back for the first time since then. pretty soon for WrestleRant to record that for the week before WrestleMania, which I'm going to, by the way. Woo! Can't wait to go with Jason. But anyway, so yeah, Jericho and Styles, I'll watch that back and maybe my thoughts will change, but I thought that was underrated. Taker and Diesel might be the best answer for your question. I thought that was pretty underrated. Again, not a 5-star classic, but one of Diesel's, not the best match he ever had in WWE. He would have better matches with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. But the match he had with Taker at WrestleMania 12, I thought was pretty good. It was probably Taker's best WrestleMania match. I mean, needless to say, up to that point. Taker and Flair is another one, a match I know RJ loves from WrestleMania 18. Again, out of all the great WrestleMania matches that Taker had, the Diesel match was pretty good, underrated because I feel people rate it off because it's terrible or on paper it looks bad, but it really was not that bad from what I remember the last time I watched it about a year and a half ago. But with Braun Strowman, I'm looking at another question here. With Undertaker and Ric Flair, that was probably Taker's first great match at WrestleMania before he would face Randy Orton and Batista and Triple H and CM Punk and Shawn Michaels. He had a really, really good WrestleMania match with Ric Flair. Most underrated of all time. That's debatable. Obviously, it's all subjective, but I would say that was pretty underrated. The feud itself was pretty good, but the match I thought was also great. And one of the hidden gems from that WrestleMania. Jericho Fandango? I've always not included that in my top underrated matches, because although it was a good match, it gets buried underneath all the shit on that show. And Fandango winning and, Fandango beating Jericho, the same guy who would beat AJ Styles years later, is kind of a joke in retrospect, and Fandango went fucking nowhere as I thought he would. But the match itself was pretty good. So, it didn't really go anywhere. It didn't really, cause a career resurgence for Fandango, because the guy was damaged goods even by then, because the character sucked. And the only thing over about him was his theme song. And the guy's a great wrestler, though. The character just fucking sucked, and it still does suck. But Breezango is underrated. That's another discussion for another day. Jericho Fandango as a match, though, was not that bad. And Cena Batista, too, doesn't really apply because I have praised it before. Again, I don't think it's the credit it deserves. Probably the best match those two ever had from WrestleMania 26. Really, really good match. Thoroughly enjoyed that WrestleMania and that match specifically. His next question, so many people are still pissed off about the flip-flopping of the Raw Women's title with Charlotte and Sasha. What's the difference between their feud and the Rock and Mankind feud from Survivor Series 98 to February of 1999? They wrestled 6 matches in that time period, and the title changed hands several times, and so many people look on that feud with fondness. Some of those same people will cry repeatedly how they hate what went down with Charlotte and Sasha. I love the Mankind Rock feud, and I think the Charlotte-Sasha matches were better. From an in-ring standpoint, Charlotte and Sasha, the matches were obviously better. That goes without saying. The matches were great. Rock and Mankind had some pretty good matches, like when Mankind first won the belt. It was not an amazing match by any stretch, but the moment itself was incredible, obviously. Their matches, not all their matches were good. Some of them early on they were still trying to find their in-ring chemistry. By the time Charlotte and Sasha started feuding, they already had that chemistry from NXT. They already worked against each other a bunch of times. That's why the matches were so good. There was not one bad match. The Hell in the Cell match was kind of wasn't a great match. It was a good match. It was a pretty good match. It wasn't a great match. But still, they didn't have one bad match in that time period from the 4 or 5 months they were feuding from July to December of last year. That said, though, I can't speak from personal experience because, as you guys know, I was not around during the Rock and Mankind feud in 1999. But even I feel like I probably would not have liked that because I don't know if I would call myself a traditionalist, but I'm just not a fan of flip-flopping titles back and forth. If it makes sense, like with Samoa Joe and Nakamura in NXT. Like Joe getting the big win over Nakamura finally, getting a clean win, and then Nakamura wins it back in Japan. Like, that made sense. It made Joe out to look like a beast. It gave Nakamura the big homecoming win in Japan a couple weeks later. So I got that. And then giving the belt right back to Rude, giving the belt to Rude like a month after that. I'm not a huge fan of flip-flopping the title back and forth if it makes sense. Even if I was a fan back then, if I was 21 years old in 1999, I probably would have felt the same way that I did about Charlotte and Sasha. I'm one of the people that did not like the fact they changed the belt so many times, as many times as they did. Charlotte has already won 5 fucking main roster titles in the matter of a year and a half. They're quickly on their way to making her a 16-time women's champion in WWE. And she's a great athlete. I'm not saying Charlotte's overrated. She's fucking fantastic as a heel. But it's like, come on. I feel like the biggest thing, or maybe not, I don't know. I feel like I gotta remember the matches with Mankind and Rock. No. I'm trying to think, like, was it the same where Rock only won on pay-per-view and Mankind only won on Raw? But that's not the case, because I'm pretty sure they had a match in No Way Out that went to a draw. And then they had a match on Raw where Rock won the belt. The thing with Charlotte and Sasha is that Charlotte almost never wins on Raw. She's a fucking loser on Raw. But she wins when it matters most. I guess it's better than the other way around, but it's still not good. You know, she should not be only winning in title matches. If she's losing non-title matches every single fucking week, it makes her look like a loser. And I know she lost to Sasha on Monday, but she'll probably go on to win the belt back at Fastlane. Wash, rinse, and repeat. It's the same shit. She only wins on pay-per-view, but she never wins on Raw. Like, that's the biggest issue with this feud. I don't know if that was exactly applicable to Rock and Mankind, but my biggest gripe with that feud was the fact that it would be so predictable. Like, I figured Sasha would win at Fastlane, but it's like, in the end, nothing got accomplished. Sasha Banks is still a fucking loser. She's a loser. She never won when it mattered most, not once. She didn't win it. She got tossed. She got eliminated like a loser at Survivor Series. So even though her team won, Bayley and Charlotte, she was tossed out like she was the second one out for her team. So she was a fucking loser then too. I think it was clean too, if I remember correctly. So she can never win it when it matters most. And it's one thing to build towards a heel turn, but I don't know. Rock and Mankind, I'm still not a fan of the fact they changed the title 2,000 times in the matter of like 3 to 4 months. But with Charlotte and Sasha, my biggest gripe with it was by the time that it ended, nothing had changed. Charlotte was still the superior superstar, and Sasha could not win when it mattered most. And that hasn't changed since. Next question of his, who has the best entrance attire and who has the best in-ring attire? Speaking of Charlotte, I would go with her for the best entrance attire. I didn't go through everyone on the roster. Charlotte was the first person that came to mind. Charlotte or Bayley. They have some great entrance attire. And their attire itself is great too. But the entrance attire with the robe, and for Bayley, like the tassels like Macho Man-like, I love that. Best in-ring attire? I would go with AJ Styles. Of course, I'm biased. He's my favorite current WWE wrestler, but his tights are great with the whole P1 on it. He changes up the color scheme, black and white and blue, red and white sometimes. So yeah, AJ Styles attire is my favorite, but like the traditional trunks and shit or the long pants is fine. Like that to me is like kind of standard, and AJ has trunks. He has tights too, but the way that he designs them, I think are pretty cool. So I'd have to go with AJ for best in-ring attire and best entrance attire, Charlotte and Bayley. Or Bayley, I guess. Either one works. Jeremy B. from Facebook, could you see Luke Harper winning Money in the Bank this year? Great question. I was going to write a whole article about this hopefully sooner rather than later, but 5 way too early picks for Money in the Bank this year. Luke Harper's leading that list. I don't think he wins the title at WrestleMania. I know the whole Battle Royal ended in a fucking draw on Tuesday. I assume he will beat AJ next week in some form or fashion to advance to WrestleMania and face Wyatt and Orton for the championship in a triple threat, which is great and a way better alternative than Orton and Wyatt one-on-one in my opinion. But yeah, if he doesn't win there, and I don't think he will, having him go on to win Money in the Bank, I think would be the best thing for him. Either that or Baron Corbin. Either Harper or Baron Corbin. Probably Baron Corbin. But Harper has a fighting chance. I think he really can't. I mean, he already kind of is a breakout star, but I think he can be a main event guy if he changes up the attire and he's given more of a character and he's able to talk more. Because the guy's not a bad talker. They just don't really give him much of a chance. I get it with the character that he currently has, but once you get past like the wife beater and shit, a look that he's had for almost 5 years now. But now that he's kind of broken off on his own, I hope he kind of changes up the attire and we see more of a formal Luke Harper. And that Luke Harper, in my opinion, could be a top guy on SmackDown as world champion. So having him win Money in the Bank is not too far-fetched. Mark S. has got a couple questions here, also from Facebook. Could you see any of these Sanity members, including the injured Sawyer Fulton, getting a singles run towards the WWE NXT Singles Men's title? Eric Young, yeah. Killian Dane, probably. I think Killian Dane's a great fit for that group, but he's also a really, really good wrestler. In addition to looking really menacing, he's also a great in-ring competitor, too. So maybe Killian Dane. Eric Young, I could see him. Not a big EY fan. I think this is a great role for him. So he's not like main eventing and shit. He just does not interest me in that role whatsoever. But in this role, I think he's great. So maybe Eric Young. Sawyer Fulton was not that good to the point where I could see him going after the NXT Championship. And definitely not the other clown either. Whoever is still there, not Sawyer Fulton. I don't remember what his name is, but the other fucking clown, the one who does the dance, and he's really not that good at all. He's all right, but he's not not Angelo Dawkins. I don't remember what his name is. The goofy dude. The goofy fucking guy. But I don't see him becoming anything more than what he is right now. But Eric Young or Killian Dane, I could definitely see getting a push beyond Sanity. His next question, what do you think of a faction involving Dolph Ziggler, Kurt Hawkins, and the Ascension looking to try and win titles on SmackDown? No, that does not. That's like a league of losers right there. You want to call them, you want to give them a faction name? That would be LOL, the League of Losers. Wow, Kurt Hawkins does not mean anything. The Ascension means nothing. Ziggler's well on his way to meaning nothing because the guy has gotten zero traction. He sucked as a babyface, but he's gotten zero traction as a heel currently in the past couple weeks. I heard when I talked to David Joseph on Wrestle Rant Radio about a month and a half ago, he had a great idea for a Ziggler. We haven't seen this guy in ages, but Jack Swagger, I know he means nothing too, but him and Ziggler have a history as teammates. They got the collegiate wrestling background, both of them do, so. And then you throw in, not American Alpha, but I know that was pitched at one point like a year ago, but I think American Alpha are fine on their own. But Ziggler, Swagger, and Shelton Benjamin, I think it would be. I know Benjamin is another guy that would be fine on his own, but a three-way collegiate wrestling background stable for SmackDown, I'd be fine with that way more than Ziggler, Hawkins, and the Ascension. That's just asking to be on Superstars or main event. And I know Superstars is canceled, so don't ask me about that. What would you have thought of Shane McMahon instead winning the Battle Royal on SmackDown last night and facing Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania for the WWE title if he was friends with Randy Orton for a long time? Would it have developed a storyline from Orton's point of view? No. I am not even that happy about Shane McMahon facing AJ Styles at WrestleMania, let alone for the championship Bray Wyatt. I mean, the match could be all right, but Shane McMahon should not be contending for the championship. I mean, he shouldn't be really wrestling at all, to be quite honest. I think it's a waste of AJ. Again, a match that could be really fun, like a la Shawn Michaels and Vince from WrestleMania 22. Almost the exact comparison, a very, very strong similarity between those two matches. Shane and AJ, Shawn and Vince. Two guys that should have been in bigger matches at their respective WrestleMania, but could end up being a great match if it's given like a no DQ stipulation or something. But anyway, with Shane McMahon winning the Battle Royal, absolutely not. It should be Harper, maybe AJ. Other than that, maybe anyone else but Shane I would be completely content with. So, and him and Orton have never really been friends. I know Orton was like, they're kind of friends now, I guess, but if you remember, before Shane came back to WWE exactly a year ago today, actually, prior to that, in 2009, he was kicked in the head by Randy Orton on Raw and had not been seen in 7 years. So, from a storyline standpoint, no, they're not exactly friends. So that doesn't really make much sense. Seeing as you said in one of your previous 205 Live reports, that some of your friends have stopped watching the 205 weekly episodes, what do you think that could be done to get them watching it again? One thought here would be to have the return title match between Neville and Rich Swann, if Neville is still champion at that point, as a steel cage match and place it as the main event on Raw. What are your thoughts? So yeah, a couple different things here. First of all, I did say that. I know Jason, who's probably listening, I know he was one person that had told me about a week or so ago. Before last week, as I thought last week's show, or no, maybe it was the week before. Yeah, it was the week before. They had the Fatal 5-Way Elimination. By far the best thing on 205 Live to date was that Fatal 5-Way Elimination match to determine the number one contender to the title at Fastlane. But other than that, the show really is not clicked for a lot of people. I still watch it because I review it, and it's a good show more often than not. It's pretty solid quality. Last night's show was pretty missable in my opinion. Just really nothing worth watching on last night's show. But I know John has not been keeping up with it. I don't know about RJ. I think he still watches. I'm not really sure. Jason, I think he said he gave up on it. I don't know if he gave it another try. He can clarify that for me. But he said the last time I talked to him about it that he does not watch it anymore. And then Tom doesn't even watch it on time. He watches it like on Fridays. So he still watches it, but it's like, okay, it's not really that big of a priority. I'll watch it on Friday. I guess it kind of replaces what Superstars once was for him. So anyway, I mean, the show's solid, but there's nothing like, oh my God, you need to see 205 Live. I think it's great they have another platform. The Cruiserweight division right now is in a way better place than it was 6 months ago, or 4 or 5 months ago. But at the same time, it's like, what can be done to increase viewership? A steel cage main event on Raw is not going to happen. It took forever to get the women in the main event of Raw. Neville and Rich Swann, the feud was really not that hot at all. It's got to be a big match to main event Raw. Like either Neville and Austin Aries, but even that I don't think they would close Raw with. Let alone in the steel cage match. That's not happening either. Maybe like a big stipulation match. I know they had I forfeit or I forgot what they called it between Arya Daivari and Jack Gallagher about a month ago. It was a pretty good match. but they have not had any, like, other than the Fatal 5-Way elimination match, they have not had any big stipulation matches on 205 Live. Maybe a steel cage match before long, like if the feud is really heated at some point, I'd be down for that, but they would not put those guys in the main event of Raw. It's got to be building, it's got to make sense. With the women, it made sense when they did it with Charlotte and Sasha and Bayley and Charlotte just recently. It made sense. Putting Neville and Rich Swann in the main event of Raw, you're just asking people to tune out. And I like both guys a lot, but it's like, it's another match. For a match that gets 5 minutes on Raw every week, if that's being generous, to then put them as the main event on the show, it's very inconsistent in my opinion. So maybe at some point, it's got to build to that point in my opinion though. Just a couple more questions here. At Concord89, to me, Enzo and Cass have become stale as of late. How should they be treated to keep them fresh? I could not agree more. RJ also asked a similar question. I'll answer it right now. Has Enzo's act gotten annoying/stale since hence the thank you Sheamus, that's a tongue twister. Thank you, Sheamus chants on Raw this past week. I agree, and I have been the biggest fan of these two, of Enzo and Cass, since NXT. And I was really excited when they got called up, and they were hot for a couple months. They got paired with John Cena, which was a huge testament to how much the officials thought of these guys as the future of the tag team division. Granted, they're not great wrestlers, but they are a very entertaining act that can make up for the fact that they can't really go. They can have good matches. The matches they had with Revival in NXT were really fucking good, both at TakeOver London and Roadblock about a year ago. So that kind of makes up for it, but ever really since they lost to Jericho, that was a really good opening match for SummerSlam when I was there. I have not seen it since, but from what I can recall, it was a really fun match. Since then, though, they lost in their hometown. Then they went on to engage in a very forgettable feud with Shining Stars that went nowhere. They never got that win back, by the way. They feuded with Shining Stars, lost to them. Feuded with the Club, lost to them. Feuded with Rusev and Lana, which was one of the most god-awful feuds I've seen in recent memory. Maybe even worse, to give Ziggler and Rusev a run for its money. At least this had a definitive ending with Enzo and Cass beating Rusev and Jinder Mahal on Raw recently. But it's like the mic work, I don't know if it's creative, I don't know if it's them, but it fucking sucks. It's awful. Like, it's John Cena comedy levels of awful. That's how bad their mic work has been recently. Like, the whole fried chicken, I try to erase it from my mind so I don't remember exactly what the lines were, but it's like, oh my god, you're killing these guys. And the merch they're coming out for them sucks too. It's like, you are killing these guys right now. And they got, like RJ had mentioned, thank you Sheamus chants. I could not tell you the last time I heard a thank you Sheamus chant on Monday Night Raw for bro-kicking Enzo Amore of all people, who was at one point one of the most over guys on the roster, because they were so fucking entertaining, but they have not been entertaining in at least 6 months, So, what would I do to get them fresh again, to kind of fire them up again? I mean, it's cool they're going after the tag titles, but again, what do those belts mean? I mean, the New Day had them for a year, which is cool, but then they took them off to put them on Cesaro and Sheamus, who held them for a month, and then dropped them to the Club, who are still being booked like shit, and now they have a match with the Club for the belts, Enzo and Cass do. So they're not going to win at Fastlane. If they do, the belts further mean nothing. That moment should have happened. I think Enzo and Cass should have been the ones to beat the New Day for the belts. That's my opinion. That should have happened at SummerSlam, or even after they broke the record in December when they were still remotely over. And people still like Enzo and Cass, but it's like, oh my god. I don't want to say they're damaged goods, but it's like, wow. Like, so much has changed. How far they have fallen. Oh, how the mighty have fallen in the past 9 months, 10 months since they got called up to Raw. It's been an abysmal run, like an abysmal fall from grace for these guys. It's been really hard to watch. So, again, just stay away from the mic work. I know that's what gets them over, but they gotta stop being repetitive with the fucking mic work and coming across like bullies. I know Mitch G brought up multiple times in the past how much he hates Enzo, he's a bully. And I kind of got it, but at the same time, like, what he was saying was still entertaining. At this point, I completely agree with you, Mitch. I apologize for jumping on the bandwagon so late. I don't hate Enzo or anything as much as you do, but I still like Enzo and Cass. It's just like, now it's really come to light how big of an asshole both these guys are. Like, unless they're turning them heel, the whole, whatever the fuck they're doing just sucks with them right now. Enzo and Cesaro sucked on Raw a couple weeks ago. It really just bothers me, just considering how hot these guys were 9-10 months ago, and to see how far they have fallen since then. So, again, I think the best thing they can do is, first of all, keep Enzo out of the ring for as much as possible. I'm not saying have Cass be a singles guy, but for tag team matches, keep him mostly on Cass, And for singles matches, do not put Enzo in the ring. Even that's what if Cesaro cannot get a competent match out of you, if he cannot carry you to a competent match, then you do not belong in the ring. Enzo sucks in the ring on his own. And also kind of getting away from that repetitive mic work, because that is what really has killed him in the past couple months, in my opinion. Next question, also from RJ, is Naomi's injury legit or a work? It looks like it's legit. I don't know why they would go so far as to, I read it was a legit injury about a week ago. If it's a work, I don't know why they would go so far as to put the belt on Naomi and then take it off of her. To me, it seemed like the story was that, can she hold on to the belt going into WrestleMania? If she got stripped of the belt to only put it right back on Bliss, it's got to be a pretty legitimate injury. I'll tie in at Mr. Singleton 16's answer, or his question here. How come Naomi had to give up the belt, but people like Brock Lesnar get to keep the title while barely defending it? I mean, Naomi's injury, it's got to be pretty serious that she's missing WrestleMania. Otherwise, why would you fucking take the belt off? The whole 30-day thing is, again, a sham because they bring it up so inconsistently. In storyline, it does make sense, but they bring it up when it's only convenient for them that it's a fucking joke. And remember that, too, when Brock Lesnar inevitably wins the Universal Championship at WrestleMania and then does not defend the belt until fucking SummerSlam. So keep that in mind, people. But for Naomi, it does look like the injury is real, which sucks, because that moment at Elimination Chamber, I almost said Fastlane, at Elimination Chamber was really, really cool, with her finally winning the championship. And then she has to give it up, and it's heartbreaking, because she worked so long and so hard to get to that point, and then to kind of suffer the Daniel Bryan treatment, where she has to give up the belt like a week, literally like a week later. Fucking sucks. That really fucking sucks. So, I really hope that she's back soon, but it seems like if they figure that she'd be out for a while, they have to change their WrestleMania plans now. Because I assume the original plan was to do Naomi, Bliss, Mickie, and Becky. And I assume Naomi is now out of the picture, so it's going to be Bliss, Mickie, and Becky for the belt of Mania. So, which is still good, but I feel bad for Naomi, though, very much so. And at Mr. Singleton 16, second question, do you think WWE has enough people that can wrestle? Where are the gimmicks/characters? I'm not saying they shouldn't hire more wrestlers, but... And they have some pretty good characters. I know exactly what you're saying. A guy like Roderick Strong is probably the most prominent example of a guy that can go. Like, he's a really, really, really good professional wrestler. But not that people don't care about him, because he is getting over, but he needs a character. And I know he didn't really have a character in Ring of Honor, on the indie scene, but WWE is a completely different beast. You're not going there just to see great in-ring action like you would for any other wrestling promotion in the world that's an indie organization. Or even Ring of Honor, really, they don't have many characters. They have like a Dalton Castle, who's super over because he's a great character. As a wrestler, he's pretty good too, but the character's what got him over, with the whole boys thing and whatever. But, no, I don't want to see, like, Enzo's a great character. He fucking sucks in the ring. So, I mean, you can have characters like that if they're far and few between. Like, if you have an Eva Marie, who I know, in a lot of people's eyes, does not belong in the ring, and I agree, but she was getting over with that whole shtick about a year ago last summer when she wouldn't wrestle, and that's a great use. That is the absolute perfect use of someone like her who cannot wrestle for shit. Like, that's what they need to do with Dana Brooke and not rely on her in-ring skills, because she's awful. She's fucking awful. So if they rely on stuff like that, because she has charisma, you know, she can be a great heel, and she has good mic skills, but when you put her in the ring, she dies a death. So you should have a good mix of characters and wrestlers, and it's not impossible to be both. Look at Daniel Bryan. I mean, he didn't really get over as a wrestler early on in his WWE career when he first came up through NXT and won Money in the Bank. People liked him because, the guy can put on a good match, but it really wasn't until he adopted the yes chant and got over as a heel and then later a babyface and a huge fan favorite in 2012, 2013, 2014 that he really became a star. And so it's possible to be both. It's possible to be a great character and a great wrestler. And Daniel Bryan is a great, great, great example of that. So they need more people like him, like AJ. I mean, he's phenomenal at whatever he does. That's kind of his character. He shouldn't be coming out there and saying, I'm a clown or something like that. I don't know, like some stupid-ass gimmick like that. If it's a gimmick as subtle as that where he says, I'm phenomenal, I'm every bit as good as I think I am, or every bit as good as I say I am, that's all you really need. You don't need the whole, bells and whistles for a lot of these guys. If they can be great wrestlers and great characters, that's the key. Like Jericho's another great example of a guy that's always been a great wrestler, but it really wasn't until he adopted the character for himself and the mannerisms and the one-liners and the goofy outfits and other lists and all that other shit that has really gotten him over as one of the greatest of all time. Final 3 questions here from @Scarlet1. How do you feel about the Battle Royal finish on SmackDown, and how was it pulled off? I like the idea of it. Just the way that it was done, because it was very obvious that Luke Harper's feet touched first. Or AJ, I forgot which way it was. I'm pretty sure AJ, it was very obvious that AJ's feet hit first. I know why they did it, to set up the match for next week. It came off very poorly, so I love the idea of building to an AJ Harper match one-on-one, because that's going to be fucking lit. I cannot wait for that. But the way that it was executed, it wasn't even the camera angle. Like, they just fucked up. AJ and Harper fucked up. The timing was not good, and I know it's very hard to pull off. It's very difficult to pull off. But it just did not come off well at all. So execution was terrible, but it wasn't really that good. But in terms of what it set up and the idea of it, I was completely content with that. Second question, did you hear about AJ Lee and Paige, quote-unquote, having a match, quote-unquote, on after Raw this week? I did. I know it was for The Rock's new movie, Thea or Tria, I don't know how you pronounce it. I think it's Thea Trinidad, who is the girlfriend of Austin Aries. You might remember her as Rosita in TNA. She's appeared on NXT a few times as well. She's really good, but she was the stand-in. I think the person playing Paige was an actual actor, but the person playing Paige was her, or rather AJ was her. And the promo she cut, you would think that they played AJ's promo from 3 years ago when she won the belt on Raw. It blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, that was incredible, because her impersonation of AJ was fucking spot on. It was really, really good. But The Rock and CM Punk then was what kind of stole its thunder, with The Rock calling him on the phone, and then went to Punk's voicemail, and then Punk tweeted out about it, following afterwards, or following the whatever happened in the Staples Center. That was what was really cool in my opinion. But the Paige and AJ thing was cool too, and I like that. That Thea is a perfect impersonation, just a absolute perfect impersonation of AJ Lee. Why they're making a movie on Paige's family when she's only 23, 24 years old? I know her family has a pretty storied history. I saw the documentary they put out on her a while ago, and it was really good, but it's like, she still has her whole career ahead of her. Like, why are you making a movie on her now? But that's besides the point. Final question, what do you think will happen to Chris Jericho's United States title reign? I assume they're facing off, him and Owens are facing off for the belt at WrestleMania. I assume Jericho comes back at Fastlane, I hope so anyway, comes back at Fastlane, costs Owens the championship, and then we get Jericho. I mean, I would love Owens, for Owens to retain. In that case, I assume Jericho would drop the belt at some point between now and Mania. As I said earlier, not the way I see it going down. But instead of Goldberg squashing Owens in the matter of a minute, which I still say is a massive mistake after what we've seen from Owens recently, having Jericho come in, cost him the championship, and building to that match at WrestleMania for the U.S. title is the best booking option in my opinion. So I assume that's the match. That's what's going to happen to his reign. Owens wins, becomes U.S. champion, and Jericho rides off into the sunset to go film or record with Fozzy and all that other stuff, because I know he's probably leaving soon, which makes me sad. It's been one of the best parts about Raw for the past year and a half now, but that's the direction I assume they're headed in. So that's it, guys. That is it for #AskGSM here today, episode 169. Again, hold your laughter. If you want to send in a question here to the show, find me on the Twitter machine @WrestleRant. Tweet me with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights or on the wall itself. And last but not least, drop a comment down below in the comment section. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So until next time, guys, have a great rest of your week. Again, as I said in the random video blog last week, I am going to WrestleMania. So the road to WrestleMania, for me, is officially underway, and I can't wait for it. It's going to be an exciting one. A lot more exclusive content coming here to the channel on the road to WrestleMania 33 in Orlando. It's going to be lit, as the kids would say. But anyway, guys, have an amazing week. Enjoy NXT, whatever else is on tonight, whatever day you're listening to this. Be well, and I'll catch you guys down the road.